Well, hello everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Connecting Communities Forum, focused on the needs and interests of Bath. And especially welcome you if you're attending for the first time. I can assure you your interests, perspectives and participation of great value. I'm Nicolette, a citizen of Bath for almost 20 years and a sustainable development professional for rather longer. As such, I'm passionate about the enduring well-being of the diverse people and interconnected communities and places that make our city what it is. But I'm also aware of the many challenges that already are and will increasingly threaten that well-being. And believing preparation and collaboration are our greatest allies in surmounting these challenges, I look forward to progressing tonight's agenda. And before I introduce the next item, do use the chat for any questions, comments, and we will get as many of those answers as we can, but if not, they'll be saved and answered afterwards. So we're going to start with a sort of combination presentation from the officers leading the work into how we use our land and how we develop it and how this can improve. Just a second, I've just lost my notes. This is the, okay. Yeah, so we're having this twin presentation on the local plan and the health and well-being strategy. And I'm going to hand over to Simon De Beer, who's head of planning, and Fidelia, if I pronounced that correctly, Richardson, who I think is a health and well-being strategy officer. So over to you to open the conversation.
Thank you very much, Nicolette. As we said, we're going to do a double act. There's two key projects emerging alongside each other, and we can all see that the benefits in those being run together, run alongside each other. The new local plan, which was launched this week, and the health and wellbeing strategy. Just as context, Simon Martin from Regeneration team, I think in June, gave you an update on some of the projects. This is now really looking to some of the next stages of work and combining strategies. So Fidelia, between us, we're going to just provide an update. You start, Fidelia, and Mark, if you wouldn't mind operating the slides for us. I think we're on to the next couple of slides, Mark. Yep.
So good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, everyone. My name is Fidelia Richardson. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Strategy Manager for Baines, and we are here trying our best to come up with a new health and wellbeing strategy that shows the views of people, the residents, people working in Baines, and volunteer organizations about what we feel are the key areas or key priorities that need to be actioned as it's said by the people. So almost every aspect of our lives is impacted by our health and how long we live. This includes our jobs, our homes, access to education and public transport. In Baines, we know that lives are being cut short and people are not living as long as they should in certain areas. Next slide, please. So here we have a picture of the building blocks that are in place that affect our health and well-being. We consider housing to be one of those determinants, family and friends, the food that we eat and having enough to eat, education and skills, the type of work that we do, transportation, whether we have access to transportation or not, and our surroundings. So do we have parks and spaces that we can use to exercise? These are all things that impact our health and well-being. And of course, the money and resources that we need to be able to afford all of these resources. Next slide. So for example, housing. So we know that housing can have a major impact on our health and well-being. When we consider the cost of housing, And the wages. We know that many people are not able to afford the housing that is suitable for their families. We are aware that there are about 5,842 households waiting on social housing. That's an increase of 12.5 from 2021. We also consider fuel poverty, in that many people aren't able to heat their houses adequately. And as a result, that leads to damp and mold, which can lead to further health and well-being challenges. Next slide. So why is the strategy important? It sets out the vision of what we want to achieve for health and well-being in Bath and Northeast Somerset. It identifies the key priorities for improving health and well-being, and it drives and influences the delivery of social and health care. It seeks to target priorities that will reduce health inequalities and support all to live healthy and well for as long as possible. And it engages local partners and communities to ensure local needs are being met. Next slide. So here we have a demonstration of how we are going to be achieving the goal that we've set out to have a new health and wellbeing strategy by January. The goal is that it will be signed off by the board, the Health and Wellbeing Board, on the 24th of January. So where we currently are at is at the public consultation phase, where we're hoping to have as many residents as possible in Baines complete a survey, a very short 5-minute survey about what keeps them healthy and well. So what they consider to be the key health and well-being priorities for their households and also for their communities, because we know that can differ. Within your household isn't necessarily what you see in your community as health and well-being needs are priority areas that need to be met. So we are asking that all residents and all members of the forum that are able to share and use their networks to send the survey link out to as many people as possible, so that we can get as many people completing the survey. It's a very short survey. The first question asks, what is your interest in health and well-being? From what angle you're coming from, whether you're a resident, whether you're a council member, a council staff, whether you're a council elected member. And from there, we ask about where you live. So we'll ask for your postcode. That helps us to understand place needs. And then from there, we ask for your household, what are the key priority areas that we need to be looking into? Some of those are going to be very directly related to your health, whether it be tobacco smoking, drinking of alcohol, physical activity, but we also have some wider determinants of health as well. So secure employment, having enough to eat. So of course, that's financial resources, food insecurity that we're tackling. We are also asking about fuel poverty. So whether or not you have, you're able to heat your home adequately. So what we're looking at is not just those specific to health, but we're looking at those wider determinants that we know are affecting people at the moment. And I know cost of living rising is a very popular topic at the moment, and it is something that is concerning to all households in England at the moment. But so we are also considering those factors that are contributing or affecting your health and well-being. So if you could use your networks as much as possible to have the survey be filled out, we'd greatly appreciate it. Next slide. So as I said before, we to get it right.
Hushon.
Pardon?
Join the meeting.
I think just carry on, Fidelia.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, to get it right, we really need to hear from you. What are those key areas that we should be looking at? What should take center stage within that strategy? Because that strategy will be used by all system partners. The ICA will use that to drive their efforts. Within the council, we're going to be using it. Volunteer organizations are going to use it. NHS will be using that to drive the initiatives that they will take forward from next year and beyond, at least for the next 5 years. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but I'm going to put the link to the survey in the chat and would be happy if you'd complete the survey and share that as well. Thank you.
move on, Mark, to the planning slides. I think from what you shared there, it's very apparent that a lot of the health and wellbeing objectives need to be delivered through a planning system, and hence why we're trying to make sure we're aligned in the work. There are different timescales, but there's close links between health and wellbeing and the planning policies, and also the economic strategies. So we're looking at all these emerging strategies together to make sure that they're aligned and work closely together. Mm-hmm. So we've just launched the new local plan. It's a long-term document. It's quite hard to look 20 years in the future, but this is the start of that process. All the more important, bearing in mind that the WECA mayor has decided to no longer progress the spatial strategy for the WECA area, and so our local plan will be fulfilling that role for Baines, as will the other authorities for their areas. It's an opportunity for us to be ambitious. As I say, it's quite hard to predict the future, but we're planning really for what the world will be like in 20 years' time. And so it's a time to look at some of the alternatives we wouldn't have normally considered, and to be really ambitious in setting the approach. Next slide, please, Mark. So to begin the process, the Baines members have given us 4 key priorities to drive the plan. And those are listed there, so it's no big surprises to you. Responding to the challenge of the climate emergency, maximising delivery of affordable housing, and making sure that new housing that is delivered meets the needs of the district's demography and things like key workers' dwellings. Establishing a transformational approach to nature and biodiversity net gain, and creating the opportunity for sustainable jobs, the kind of jobs needed that responds to the businesses we have and the kind of economy that we think we need is appropriate for the district. Next slide, please, Mark. That doesn't mean to say we can ignore the other issues. There's a range of other issues which are of concern to residents, of concern to other communities, which the government requires that we address, and I won't go through all of those, but the local plan will be broad. It'll have to address all the issues which have a planning implication. One of the key points to mention, I think, is transport, because we can't write a sustainable, robust plan without working very closely with transport colleagues. The two are so integrated. There's also the issue ongoing that government requires we deliver and meet our housing needs. That'll be something which the local plan will need to address. Next slide, please, Mark. I've reproduced there, and it is quite. I think we missed the slide, Mark. I think we've jumped. Mark, we jumped a few slides. No, so we seem to have missed a few slides. So just carry on. I'll just fill in the gaps. If you just carry on back to that the map of Bath. So that's the existing spatial strategy for Bath and the existing local plan. That was responded to the kind of issues and problems that we. Sorry, Mark. Just go back to the map. Thank you. So that is the list. We respond to previous concerns. We're now at the process of reviewing the spatial strategy. We need to update those policies to respond to what are the key issues facing us now. And some of those key issues, which are listed on the next slide. So, and I don't claim to be an expert in these issues. If you move on, Mark, what we're beginning is a conversation with communities around what their local priorities are and what the issues are affecting them, and those which the local plan should need to address. So alongside those drivers, which our members have given us, what other issues need to be addressed by the local plan. The local plan launch is going to lead to some community engagement events, some initially towards the end of this year, and we'll be writing to communities to explain how we want to conduct those, but also how you want to engage in the process as the forum. So we want to engage with you in a way that's most constructive to you, and so we'll be advised by you how that should happen, whether you want us to work directly with you or with a sub-local plan working group or whatever process you find helpful. And then that'll be followed up by workshops again in the summer of next year. We need to look at some of the options and some of the solutions to some of the problems as far as they relate to planning. But these conversations will also feed into things like the economic strategy and the health and wellbeing strategy, because there's so much interrelation. So for both on the health and wellbeing side and the local plan, there's an opportunity for us to hear some initial views from yourselves. And there we've put down some potential issues which we've garnered just through various conversations. That isn't comprehensive. You may agree with some of those have come from you, or you may disagree with some of those. And And so really, I don't know how long we've got, Chair, just for people to raise queries about the process we're going through and ask questions about both of those strategies, and raise issues we think we should be of concern. Did you want to stop sharing, Mark, and we can? Just want to open it up, Nicoletta, to questions or queries, observations.
I'm just going to start by asking a question about the process. It's great that you've got that long list of issues which you're welcoming people to engage with more specifically as to how they're concerned in their particular place. What's the best way of connecting a group of people, for instance, who are really interested in finding space to grow food, or to get involved with that, whether they're choosing an area or land or doing it in a group? How should they input to the council with their ideas and wants? Or
I think that's one of those issues which really in the past has fallen between two stools. We don't often require planning permission for that, but it does affect the planning system. I do see Dave's come in, whether Dave wanted to make a comment on that. You're on mute, Dave.
You're mute, yeah.
In the chat, Councillor Joanne Wright's put a question in there. Why are not buses listed in transport? There's clearly a need for public transport, and the only present option is buses.
Should we move on to that one? I'm not quite sure we answered the food production one, Nicola. I haven't got a straightforward answer because it is something which is normally outside the planning system. But we can certainly begin to have those conversations with communities as we've now launched the local plan consultation and garnering comments which affect a range of strategies, and then we could pick that up in terms of how best to begin to respond to it, and where Baines could possibly assist in that process. Obviously, there's a lot of local enthusiasm for that, and we've seen quite a few proposals coming forward, or some proposals coming forward, where community. The point you're making is how can Baines assist in that process? I don't have an answer to that just at the moment, but that's something we could consider as part of the kind of view expressed to us. But I'll make a note of that one in particular. On the buses, I think it's a very good point. As I said before, the local plan, there was a reference in the slides to public transport, and we won't have a sound plan if we don't align it very closely with a sustainable transport system. So we are working very closely with our transport planners in the local plan process to make sure that all the options we look at are tested and taken forward alongside transport proposals. Obviously, we have certain controls. We're not entirely in control of some of the transport proposals. Some of those are regional, some of those are national. Where we do have influence and decisions to make, we make sure that those are planning and transport is progressed in a complementary way.
Can't see anybody else asking. But, oh, I think there's a question in the chat from Karis.
The point about what's the transformational approach about particularly enhancing nature. I think that stems from the council's much higher priority on responding to the ecological emergency, and the fact that a lot of the our developments and plans in the past perhaps have been quite harmful to ecology. What we suggest now the approach should be that should be much more placed in the forefront of formulating spatial strategies. And so we would expect development in the future not only to protect and not to harm ecology, but to very positively provide for improvements to ecology, improvements to networks and green infrastructure, as a significant consideration in all development. So that'll be linked with the emerging local nature strategy, which Baines is going to be stewarding on behalf of the sub-region. And so you will see in the emerging policies and priorities, the approach to nature will be forefront in terms of seeking to, say, as I say, enhance and find improvements. I
was going to ask another question, part of observation. But some of the issues which are most of concern, particularly when it comes to the health and well-being, they all need to sort of be addressed holistically. So you have something like having locally grown food, which you've participated in some way in the growing of it, or having shared land which you can have access to for recreation, or taking care of that land as well in nurturing and improving its biodiversity. They all sort of work together, but the planning sort of system, some of the decisions which enable those things are all sort of taken in different sorts of silos. So I just, it's great that you've twinned the two presentations on health and well-being with local planning, but I think that sort of interweaving together of the priorities and the policies and all things, there's more work to be done in that.
I do know there's some conversation being had, which is not fully developed, I don't believe yet, about that food security topic that you raised, and I think it is something that is in the work in the council. I won't speak too much on it because I do know that it's being, I think it's not within public health, but public health will definitely have a seat at the table when it comes to topics, anything around food, and making sure that it is something, it's healthy food that is being produced for residents of Baines. I think someone has a question.
It's Keris. Got her hand up.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, as you know, there's a new Journey to Net Zero forum, and transport happens to be a particular area of my interest, but obviously this applies more widely as well. There isn't really any representative body for Bath that speaks for Bath at the moment, and that means that we're always at a disadvantage as compared with other areas where there are parish councils and people who get A, consulted at an early stage, and B, have a bigger voice than individual residents or individual residents associations. So how is that going to be allowed for in the development of the local plan, where actually Bath is such a fundamentally important part of the area, economically as well as in all sorts of other ways?
I think that's a very good question, bearing in mind that half the population of the district lives in Bath. It is something we're aware of. For us, working with the parishes is quite easy because they exist as structures for us to communicate with. What we're going to have to do in Bath, and partly we are asking you that question: how's it best? Obviously, we've got the forums, and we're now working in a way within the council, the more place focused, to make sure that each of the places does get a fair understanding and a fair conversation, and that includes Bath. So, there's various things we could be doing in engaging with you, but what we are going to be doing is engaging with yourself to, well, how best can we do that? How can we make sure the way we work with you makes sure that your views are heard in terms of highlighting your priorities? And so in terms of setting up the workshops later this year, part of the conversations will be with yourselves and with your chair. What's the best mechanism, ways of doing it? I didn't know whether Simon or Dave wanted to add anything to that.
No, not really, Simone. I mean, what you said is absolutely true. There is a sort of local democratic deficit that's been in Bath since the demise of Bath City Council in '95. And Keris, you're right. On occasions we have to work twice as hard to achieve the same amount of coverage in Bath, and especially in some of the suburban areas of Bath, which probably, after living and working here for 35 years and being one of those suburbanites myself, some of the suburban areas of Bath are probably, it's very difficult because we're asking ward councillors to do an enormous amount of work. And in the parish areas, they are, amply supported by parish and town councils, and some of our parish and town councils are doing some quite remarkable work. There isn't an easy answer to it, apart from at some point in the future there will have to be a discussion about that particular democratic deficit.
Simon, do you want to reply to that?
I was just going to add, Nicolette, just the conversation we're having about trying to help you to join a number of stakeholder groups together and use the forums as a more diverse and inclusive conversation. So there are a number of other bodies like the Bath Initiative, which is a business-based cohort of kind of stakeholders. We've got Business West, we've got a number of other kind of other stakeholder groups, and one suggestion we've perhaps asked Nicolette to consider is how do we draw those in so you've got a broader conversation and a broader base of participation to help the forum to develop that conversation. So whilst it doesn't address the democratic deficit as Dave aptly described it, I think it does provide an opportunity perhaps to broaden this grouping and conversation and perhaps give it a bit of a louder voice as we could bring in more people to contribute to that conversation. And we see that as a good opportunity to help develop the forum into perhaps a more representative and broader spectrum of individuals for the city. Is that helpful, Nicolette?
It's at one level it's very helpful, but but at another level, it's how do you do that? You know, we're starting from a place where we haven't even had the Bath area forum in its current form. It's only been in place for a year or so, and we've actually got to attract all those stakeholders in. So I think maybe what we need is a Bath focused, so a Bath area forum meeting which is focused on transport and the transport issues, and then really sufficiently far in advance to try and really make sure we get all those sort of stakeholder groups, as many different stakeholder groups as we can present. And maybe from that there may be somebody who would champion the Bath, so for instance on the net zero, journey to net zero forum, and just really specialize in doing that. I'm all too aware of the deficit around transport, but I can only put in so many hours on so many places on this. So it would be great if we can identify somebody who would really take that role on. Karis, let's go back to you again.
Yeah, I just really wanted to pick up on the comments about stakeholders, and I wanted to point out there's actually a considerable power imbalance between ordinary people who live in Bath, including probably to some extent smaller businesses, especially those that aren't in the city centre. There are a lot of businesses, and the bigger organisations are all very, very well represented with very loud voices of their own, and usually expensive professional representation. So when I'm talking about the democratic deficit, I'm really thinking, and you know, people from Bath being heard, I'm really thinking of a voice that currently isn't being heard, which is largely people who live here. And also, of course, it's lovely that there are people who come to this forum, but actually it's notable that it does tend to be quite a lot the same old people, and there really is a need to try and reach out to groups that aren't normally heard, like, well, younger people, just really, you know, those communities that are unlikely to be heard in the normal run of things. Public transport's a perfect example because, of course, you know, the people who use public transport are very often the people who are least heard in society, and they don't really get their fair shout. So yeah, I hear what you're saying about stakeholders, but quite a lot of them are well represented already.
Just to add, Nicola, that in response to what she was just saying, that we do have, alongside the local plan launch document we published, an engagement strategy. And you may say I'm saying the obvious, but in that we have identified in the engagement, as well as the normal engagement we would do, there are groups, as Teresa said, which do sometimes struggle to engage. So we have identified residents, fairly enough. Those are quite often an issue. Small businesses we've identified, young people, I think you said all of those three. Some of the faith groups, and there's about 7 or 8 groups which we're going to have to make particular efforts to find ways of making sure we can have those conversations with them alongside the wider conversations we have. So we've got as far as identifying those groups, and I'm glad that you're feeding back we've put on the right track and looking at which groups we need to be focusing on. What we haven't done yet, and we need to hold our hands up, is how we're going to do that. In the past, we've gone into schools and gone into where they're based and on their territory, and involved as part of their curriculum and done some work with schools, which was very productive, and we had a very good response. We still need to think, well, how can we, what are the mechanisms we need to be doing to help those different voices get involved in, and so we can hear those and their voices as loud as the others. So that's what we need to be doing between now and the end of the year. What practically are the mechanisms that are needed to facilitate those conversations? And that will involve us taking extra effort to set those in place.
Is there scope for just going into those communities somehow, where the ones which we don't hear from, rather than waiting for them to come to the council, come to the meeting or fill in the questionnaire, and actually somehow getting a presence there and collecting the views?
Well, funny enough, in Simon's team, some of our colleagues have just bought some little marquees which they take onto the street, so they don't go away in a building somewhere, but they sit themselves up on the street. And watching that happen, it does really facilitate just people passing by, showing an interest and engaging. And so, obviously, weather depending, and if it's not too windy, it's probably something we could deploy in parts of Bath. Take the marquees and just see if we get the same kind of response. You know, where there's high footfall.
Like at a bus stop where there's no bus or and lots of people. Anybody else want to have a closing word on this discussion, or anything else? Any comment? Or if not, let's move away from sort of preparing for the future to work together in the present. I'm getting the cost of living crisis and what we can do about it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, item 3, how can we work together to address the cost of living crisis? It's something that we've been working very closely with a lot of our partners and community and voluntary organisations for probably about a month or so. And just to give you some sort of baseline figures, if you talk to the CAB, the number of people that are approaching them with all sorts of issues around debt and crisis is drastically increasing. If you talk to Bath Mind, the number of people that are contacting them with quite significant issues around anxiety is vastly increasing. If you go to a big charity like Mercy in Action, who've got a lot of charity shops in the city of Bath particularly, they will tell you that they've got 150 families. They are supporting 700 odd people every week. And a lot of those people that are coming into those charities and are going to the food banks, and I talk regularly to the people that run the food banks and the food pantries in the city and in Bath, North East Somerset, a lot of those people that are going in are people that they've never seen before. They're not what you would term their usual customer base. They tend to be, in the vast majority, people who are in work, but literally have now got to a stage where either because of energy or predicted energy prices, or the fact that now mortgages, if you're on a fixed rate mortgage and you're going to need to change, your mortgage is going to go up quite dramatically, and they are really struggling. So the cost of living crisis, although it's not quite upon us, the signs of it the dark clouds on the horizon, talking to the organisations and partners, are definitely there. So it's one of the things that we obviously as a council are looking to try and do something to address with some of our community voluntary organisations. One of the things that we can do is we're talking about sort of making available, particularly our libraries and some of our council buildings, to be available during the winter, to be able to support people who perhaps can't afford to turn the heating on, and so that there will be locations that people are able to go. And a lot of the information is being currently populated onto the council's website. So if you do get people that you're in contact with who are worried and anxious about it, the first port of call will be the council's website, where it will identify some of the warm spaces across Bath and North East Somerset. It will identify some of the organisations that you can go to, such as the CAB and Bath Mind, and some of the charities and the food bank providers. And basically, we are in the process at the moment of trying to explore every avenue that we possibly can in order to support some of our local resident population. Now, a lot of that, is dependent on what happens in the next few weeks. A lot of that, to be perfectly honest, is dependent upon how harsh a winter we have, not being awful. But everything is being focused through the Community Wellbeing Hub, which is based up at Peasdown, which has been in existence for 2.5 years and was set up in March 2020, basically to deal with the COVID crisis. And we went through the 3 waves of COVID. We also ran the whole of the vaccination programme from up there with our partners. We have also run the Homes from Hospital health packs with the Royal United Hospital in order to support the hospital in order to get people who are fit and healthy enough to be at home, to get them back home. And also we ran, on top of all of that, we've also been running the Homes for Ukraine programme, where we've got about 350 Ukrainian guests in Bath and North East Somerset who we are supporting on a regular basis. So the Community Wellbeing Hub is there. Again, all the information and details are on the council's website, and that should be the first port of call for anybody that needs any help or assistance. Councillor Wright is saying yes, often people in need do not have internet access. And that is absolutely right. There is a telephone number to phone. There is a standard telephone number with and you will speak to an individual person who's part of the triage team. And depending on your particular needs, they can signpost you then to different organisations who will contact you. It's all part of that issue about how do we reach the seldom heard people, the people that are really difficult, that fall between the cracks. And the way that we reach them is we actually actively have to go out and contact them. As long as we can get their details, and if we can get that through the phone number and through the Community Wellbeing Hub, there is a software system called Rivium that we use that allows us to embed them into the system and allows our partner organisations to contact them. And what we will be doing, again, as part of the Community Wellbeing Hub and as part of the cost of living crisis, is there will be, with our trusted organisations, an opportunity for online referral. So if somebody comes to notice in whatever way, the organisation refers those people into the Community Wellbeing Hub through the online referral form, and then those organisations will proactively go out and actually engage with those people, because, as I said, seldom heard people, it means more effort for us. It means us actually going out and contacting them, and we're doing that. We're doing that on a regular basis. I'm taking a chap tomorrow to his building society to get his money out, because he's got no money, literally no money, and he's got mobility issues. And so, again, he's one of those people that we seldom hear, but when they come to our attention, the whole idea about the Community Wellbeing Hub is we sort those problems out and we deal with them. So and sometimes that means doing things, unusual things, in a different way. Which can be quite challenging, but as we always say with the Community Wellbeing Hub, the whole idea about it is that we wrap the services around the individual. We don't expect the individual to wrap themselves around our services, because if you've got no internet access, or you've not got a phone or a mobile phone, the chap tomorrow doesn't have a mobile phone. He just phones me on his landline, but we've got to actually make that effort to engage and work out and sort out some of those problems. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's very fluid, it's very ongoing. There's lots of stuff. We had 2 meetings again today, one internally as a council, one externally with our agencies and partners that we're working with, about 40 different agencies and organizations, and a lot of it will get populated onto the website, and then we will be pushing some of this information out to all of our organizations to engage as many people as possible. So if you do come across any issues, it's the Community Wellbeing Hub. Mark's put the number there in the chat, 0300 247 0050. That is the first place to go. If anybody's got any questions, I'd be quite happy to take them. Yes, Joe. Yeah.
You're on mute.
Nope, still on mute, Joe.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, that's it.
Told me I was unmuted. It was lying. Apologies for that. Hi, I'm Jay. So I'm a resident, but I'm also here. I run a charity called Oasis Hub Bath, and we deliver a couple of different food pantries and host lots of other community work as well. And I'm obviously really interested by cost of living, and we're sort of trying to respond to that. I just wondered, do you anticipate the council being able to sort of offer any resources or support to kind of smaller charities like ours who are trying to set up warm spaces? Is that kind of part of the warm spaces sort of network and conversations that you're having?
Yeah, no, definitely we can. If you want to get in touch with me directly through by email, then we can signpost you, because what we learned 2.5 years ago with COVID is the council cannot solve this problem on its own. And so wherever we can possibly engage local organisations and groups and individuals and push as much of the demand profile down to the grassroots level as possible is actually the only way that we're going to be able to achieve the coverage that we need to achieve, because it is going to be a real issue. The thing, talking to the people that run the food banks, they're talking to me about, there are council staff who are in full-time employment going to the food banks for the very first time. There are staff that were working at the Royal United Hospital, never been near a food bank again, who are working full time, who cannot now get to the stage where they can make ends meet. And so it's broadening that envelope of people that are affected in ways that we could never have imagined. And again, like I said, we've got to try and support each other to try and get ourselves through it, especially through the next 6 months until we get to Easter.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks. And that's been our experience at our food pantries. Not only are we seeing our numbers shooting up, but we're also seeing people return to us who, were members maybe a year ago, got themselves into a better situation, and now finding that they're needing to return, which is really sad. So thank you. I will.
No. Mark's put my email address in there, and you're absolutely right. And talking to Alison and John Todd, who run the Mercy in Action charity, what's really terrifying is that food pantries and food is available for people, but people are looking at stuff that they need to cook and not taking it because actually they can't even afford to cook the food. So they're looking at stuff that you can eat that is cold, basically.
Yeah, that's happening at our food pantries as well. Yeah. Thanks, I'll email you.
Anybody else? Sorry, that's all quite depressing. I do apologise.
I was just going to ask, are all the channels you used when we had the COVID problems to actually make people aware of the Community Wellbeing Hub and what can be done?
Yeah, I mean,
and the second question is, if you actually know of an individual who needs support, do you actually have to get their permission, or before you can just inform the Community Hub?
It's always better if you, yes, you do, because often a lot of the trigger points for people over the last 2.5 years has been food. It's literally lack of food, one way or another. And so we would go and visit them, or they would present themselves, and we would say, oh, actually, You know, there are other issues that we can help you with. It may be debt, it may be mental health, maybe drug and alcohol issues and problems that they're worried about. But we always sort of said, are you happy that we feed you into the system and somebody else will contact you? And the vast majority of people were. Occasionally people said, no, I'm not interested, in which case, fine, you know, we've done the delivery. But often what we found with those people is that they kept coming back. And every time they kept coming back, we kept asking them the same questions, because again, what we want to try and avoid, we want to be trying to be proactive in engaging with people and supporting them, and not just be a continual safety net. So they would fall, we'd pick them up, they'd fall, we'd pick them up. And then at some point, one of the organizations or whatever would say, well, actually, can we just try and help you stop falling? And that's quite a difficult conversation with some of our very vulnerable people. Sorry, and I've forgotten. I've whiffled on. I've forgotten what was your first question now.
No, you've answered. You've answered both.
All right.
And I just wanted to say, huge thanks, and it's amazing work which the Community Wellbeing Hub is doing, and just we're all behind you to keep it going. And it's great to know that even if we can't help people directly, we can introduce them.
It's been an interesting 2.5-year journey, and it's not replicated across the whole country. I'm going to say it's not by sheer quirk. We ended up with a collaboration of the public sector being the council, the private sector being Virgin Care, who was our adult social care provider, but a private company at the time, and then the community and voluntary sector. So you put all three together in a building and said, go on, get on with it. And we were like, how is this going to work? I have no idea. What it did do is it changed our attitude towards delivery and dealing with issues and problems. So a problem would arise and it's like, we need to sort this out. And what we're trying to do with the cost of living thing is use that knowledge and experience over 2.5 years to deal with a selection of issues that are going to arise, but nobody knows actually how bad it's going to be until it happens. And then when it happens, obviously, hopefully we'll be able to deal with it. But that is the real issue with the people that we're dealing with at the moment, is that complete anxiety where you've got no idea what's going to happen in the next 6 months.
I can see a hand up from Rachel. Would you like to
Yes, hello. I'm the chair of FOBRA, Federation of Bath Residents Association.
Hello.
Hello. I just heard Joe and yourself mention warm spaces. Funding for that, funding opportunities for residents who are across Bath who might like to contribute to that. What's the sort of funding opportunities? Are you reaching out to the wider community in Bath to help contribute to provide those warm spaces? Is there a mechanism for that?
So for physically actually providing a venue to go to, you mean, also financially supporting a venue?
Well, Joe mentioned earlier, Joe Dolby, that her charity was going to be providing warm spaces, and you mentioned warm space, and it seems like a very critical provision potentially if we have a very, very cold winter, and just trying to understand where not only the provision of those, but where would the funding come from, and is there an opportunity for us to reach out across the city to those who could afford to donate, who would like to donate to that sort of provision, who would organise, who would coordinate that? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, with the council provision, obviously we would be using our own buildings, and so that's all financially accounted for in the fact that there are libraries, there are council offices. Some of the wider provision is often done through either the faith groups or some of the community and voluntary organisations and charities, and we can certainly signpost people to different organisations that would be delighted to have additional funding and able to support local people in Bath, depending on what the individual donor is particularly interested in. So I mentioned Mercy in Action. That's a very good charity. There's Bath City Farm who's been doing things. Southside Family Project. Bath City Football Club. There's a whole group of different organisations of voluntary community sector people doing different things, and sometimes actually in a really grassroots level, we've got local communities where they're getting together and saying, do you know what, I'm going to heat my house on a Monday, everybody come round. And then people take different days, and it's literally, some of it is as low level and as simple as that. Now, obviously, that's something that we're not going to be able to organise as a council because it's too much level into the detail. But we can certainly signpost people. If, again, the thing to do is push all of the stuff through the Community Wellbeing Hub and through that telephone number, and then we know what's going on.
So on the Community Wellbeing Hub,
yeah,
would you have a list of those charities, the sorts of services they're providing? I'm just thinking about the members of FOBRA. We have hundreds and hundreds of members who are very engaged in the city of Bath, in their local communities. And this is something that we could send out to our members to let them know that there are these opportunities to help fund and help subsidise the charities that are providing these services. Would you have a list of those on your Wellbeing Hub?
Yeah, no, we'd have a list of those, and there are some other things. I mean, the council ran and started last year the Community Contribution Fund, which was that opportunity for local taxpayers to pay additional council tax into a fund that went towards charitable events and organisations. And I think we raised last year about £25,000–30,000, and a lot of that money was again distributed to local charities. So that is a fund that we currently have, and again, we would be able to signpost people to that if that's how they wanted to make their donations.
Thank you. I think you've answered the question. We'll make sure that we get in contact with you to get those sorts of that sort of information, and we'll make sure that we send that out to our members.
Okay, brilliant.
To understand the opportunities for them to help in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that's, sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. Oh no, it's been answered. Yeah. Are we going to have a map where warm hubs are? Yes, we are. It'll all be up on the website, and organisations will be putting forward their facilities and what activities can take place in there and where they are, and that will all be up on a map.
Yeah, that would be very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next item, which is future agenda, and particularly on the next meeting. I had a conversation with Simon Martin very early September when we sort of talked about the sorts of issues which it would be good to actually have to talk about at the meetings, and we identified a number where we felt there could be good engagement, given that there were sort of very pertinent strategic themes which the council was working on, and they might also chime with the sort of the priorities and the needs of particular communities. So there could be scope to influence, shape, and input into those, which I will mention some of those ones were. And I think we also, just sort of looking ahead towards next year, we will, after the November meeting, there will be a budget meeting, I think as well, late November, early December. But then there'll be a meeting in March before we go into the purdah period, and then probably one in June, and then one in September. So it'd be sort of quite good to sort of think ahead as to what themes people might be interested in. So I'm really just interested in getting any feedback, any ideas of which ones might be particularly resonate. We've already talk touched on transport and livable neighbourhoods, which there are some whether it might be central topic if you have actually around sort of energy at home and the retrofitting agenda. So we could touch on issues around the enabling planning policy, retrofit grants, advice, solutions, and also an EV infrastructure. So that might be another topic area. Another one might be issues around the sort of the evidence base for the economic strategy work, and particularly identifying how particular interventions might help, particularly Bath issues of concerns. So whether it's housing affordability for key workers, businesses suffering from the cost of living crisis, or that might be another area.
I think, Nicolette, your signal's quite poor, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, you keep dropping in and out. That's better now, I think.
Okay, well, I'm not saying. I've just given another issue on the table, which is around how can we actually address effectively those marginalised communities, endemically marginalised, and so that might be another topic area. As my signal is not particularly good, it would be lovely to hear ideas from other people. Or
Chris, I can see you've got your hand up. I think Nicolette's frozen again.
if that's a lady hand, or you actually wanted.
I know, it's back.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm unhelpfully not going to suggest other headings, but I'm going to say I think that it would be helpful if there could be more space in meetings for people to have a free discussion about what they want to talk to, rather than a sort of top-down decision as to what the agenda is. I don't know what other people think of that.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in there just for a second? I mean, that is a really, really good idea, and it's something that all the forums raise with us on a sort of regular basis. It's always about striking that balance between, we as a local authority have got lots of stuff going on and information that we need to try and talk to you about, but you as groups and organisations and individual residents have got a lot of stuff that you want to talk about and you want to push it up to us, and often it's just a case of trying to strike what the right balance is between that, and sometimes it changes. But I do think that's a really good point that we can, Mark and I would talk to Nicolette and discuss that.
Rachel, and then Sue.
Yes, it's a I don't believe either of the universities have their representatives with us this evening, but I'm just minded that at our last FOBRA meeting we did have some student union representatives. We had the president of the newly appointed president of Bath University Student Union join us, and I met with a community liaison person who sits on their board of directors, just to talk about some of the issues that students are facing this year as they join our city, or actually those that are coming back to study in the city, who've studied here in years gone by. And some of the issues that they're facing with personal safety, given the cuts to bus services, I think are quite substantial. And I would quite like to have this discussed further in terms of what are the issues that students are facing in this city as essential bus services are cut, because many residents may not sort of be travelling home to more vulnerable areas at night, but we know that the young people that are at our universities do need to do that. And I'm very concerned about this as an issue in Bath, with the number of students that we have and with the cuts to bus services that we have.
Nicolette's disappeared off my screen. Signal obviously is not very good. Yes, sorry. I sit with Dina Romero on the student community partnership, so I've met all those student people, and they did say that they've been to see you, and I think you're absolutely right. A quarter of the population of Bath are students from Bath University and Bath Spa University, and Norland College, and obviously Bath College. So I think it's really quite important that we get an opportunity to actually listen to some young people's voices. That's something that certainly we can take on board. Nicolette, you're back.
Yes. Yes, Can we just go to Sue, who's also got her hand up?
Hi, thanks. I'll try and keep this short because this is for residents, not councillors. I sit here trying not to butt in, but just on Rachel's last point there, yeah, I think that's a point well made. And but I wonder whether we could just extend it a little bit to young people generally in Bath. And, you know, I know there's the Safer Streets campaign going on and the police are involved with that, and police in the centre of Bath involved. So we might be able to take a slightly broader view if we're going to have it on the agenda, and maybe get someone from the city centre police team to come in and talk to us. And maybe Dina might be able to offer something up on the Safer Streets campaign. And just, I mean, I know that we are doing things, CCTV camera, and the police are getting reports done on how to make areas less hostile to people, especially some areas in town in the early hours of the morning. So yeah, that was not what I was going to talk about, but I say it was a point well made by Rachel. Yeah, what I was going to say was just the numbers, and this might be a one-off, but the numbers in this forum have dwindled a bit, and we have talked about the democratic deficit and how quite a lot of people in Bath aren't represented at these types of things, and a lot of the consultations that we have, and you know, transport forums and all sorts of forums, that there are a lot of people in Bath that don't attend those and aren't covered. So, and again, Rachel might be able to help here, but I wonder how, and whether we need to talk about this, just how we can get the message out to get people to attend this. We want these people to attend. We want them to give us their views, you know. And something I'd be interested in is about standard of housing in Bath, and that also all sorts of housing, so housing association, all housing, and just how people are managing, because a lot of the reason why people are suffering with the cost of living is because the places that they live don't keep them warm and dry. And I know a lot of my constituents, residents in the city centre, have this problem. Curo are pretty good, but some of the other housing associations aren't so great. So I'd really like to get those voices heard on here, and I don't know how we can do it. I mean, I tell as many people as I can about this forum and try and encourage people to come along. But yeah, I don't know whether it's worth having a discussion, whether Rachel can help a bit with FOBRA to filter that down through the resident associations, although again, traditionally the people that we're trying to include here who aren't represented don't tend to come from areas that have got resident associations, so it is difficult. But anyway, I just wanted to say that.
don't know if I still got a bad signal or not, but I completely hear what you're saying, Sue, about wanting to get those voices heard and at the meeting. And I was just wondering, going back to the meeting we had in January on the youth work going on, which I think was very well attended. I only watched the recording, I wasn't there, but I think and that was very different what we did, because we actually got various young people's organisations to present. Sometimes they did a pre-recorded video, sometimes they were actually there. So we had the representatives of those organisations or initiatives, or the young people themselves, actually taking a much greater share of the airtime. And I can't help.
You're breaking up again, Nicola. It might help if you turn your video off, actually. Might give you a bit more airway for your voice.
Is that any better? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just thinking, if we tried a meeting which had that sort of format, that at least a significant amount of the airtime was taken up by somebody from within the community, telling what either on an initiative they're doing or the needs and problems they're having, might just balance out a bit from the information coming from the council and the and what's coming from the communities.
Good idea.
Now time's pressing on. I was just thinking, if you have any thoughts, any further thoughts, any ideas, new ones, or even just, I think, just picking up on that last point, ideas as to what a community or a particular interest, who might be interested in showcasing what they're doing in a meeting, do let Mark Mark know, and we'll pick those up. Now, going on to the AGM, which I'm actually going to ask Dave, who has a better connection than me anyway. So.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I love this bit. This is the bit where I get to run the forum for about 5 minutes, or once every year. So obviously the AGM, the annual report and the terms of reference have all been circulated with the paperwork. And as far as we're aware from Mark and I, that we've not had any comments or any suggestions or amendments have been received. In which case they are as they were sent out. The only thing I would say is that obviously every year the AGM people have an opportunity to change the terms of reference, and on occasions in the other forums that does happen as the forums develop and evolve in different ways. So at the moment we've got nobody. We've got no terms of reference changes, and nominations for the position of chair for the forum for the next 12 months. Nicolette has very kindly agreed to put herself forward as for the position of chair. We've not had any nominations received for vice chair. So unless there's anybody that particularly wishes to put themselves forward now tonight, I am going to suggest that we nominate and put Nicolette into the chair of the forum for the next 12 months until the next AGM. Has anybody got any issues with that? If so, now is the time. No, I can't see anything. I can't see anybody yet. I can't see anything in the chat. So I can say, Nicolette, congratulations. You are back into the chair for the forum for the next 12 months until our next AGM. And that's me.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. And it's something I really want to do, because for all of its blemishes and the difficulties, and I think having the channel of communication between the council and the communities, and working how to work together is the only way we're going to rise to the challenges which we're already facing, and even more will be coming our way. I also put myself forward because although I expressed interest in the role, I think last October, November, and I did sort of chair the December budget meeting. I then had a bereavement, which meant I didn't miss the March one, and so the first one I actually chaired was last May. So I feel very much I'm at the beginning, feeling my way, making a lot of mistakes, but learning a lot too. So I feel I can do much more to in the next year than I have done so far. I would also absolutely love to have somebody to work with, a vice chair, ideally somebody who is from a different generation, who's a different perspective, maybe somebody who isn't a homeowner, so they really understand some of the issues that, but more important than anything, somebody who actually really wants to make Bath a great place to live and work in. And I also think that a lot of it's a privilege to be able to work with the senior people in the council who have got more resource and more influence than any of us have individually, and the wider stakeholders as well. Not just the council, it's also the university, it's all the public services, it's charities. Yeah, so even if if you or anybody you know is interested in, do put them in contact and let's have a chat and try it out. And I think Keris has got her hand up. Is that a legacy hand, or do you want to say something?
No, it's the real hand. As it happens, I did just quite recently have a look at one or two of the other forum websites, and I noticed that they did have terms of reference, but I don't think there's anything matching on the Bath Area Forum website. So I might be wrong about that, but if there is anything, I'm not aware of. I think it was Chew Valley in particular had some quite complicated terms of reference, and so I just really wanted to ask, are we supposed to, because I have no idea what our real status is or any of that, and maybe we should know. Maybe it's not a question for now, but I was a bit surprised when you referred to our terms of reference now, because I didn't remember seeing them.
They should be on the website. I don't know if
be there. We'll have a look. We'll have a look, Keris. Thanks for bringing that up. I'll get Mark and I will have a check of that tomorrow. But status of the forums, they're not a committee of the council. They're not an official, representative body affiliated to the council, but they are held in high regard by the councillors and the council officers, and they are a very, very, very valuable vehicle for communication and collaboration. So it's kind of they're a bit of a sort of halfway house.
I just need to ask, is there anything else anybody else would like to say or add, or if not, I will say I'm looking forward to seeing as many as you can at the next meeting, which is going to be the 21st of November, and at the same time and on Zoom, I guess. And yes, I've also got, no, that can't be right. I've got, is it the 2nd of November for the council budget meeting?
Yeah, that's correct, Nicola. Yeah, that's the webinar for the introduction to the budget position. Yeah.
Okay, so that one comes first, and then it's our Bath one on the 21st.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm sure Mark will be forwarding all the the agendas and everything.
Mhm.
Don't forget to let us know if there are things you particularly want to have on it. Otherwise, I will just say thank you very much, and I will close the meeting.